The neon sign above Mary's diner flickered in the night. It buzzed faintly, like an old heartbeat struggling to keep time. Inside, the warm smell of pancakes and coffee filled the air. The booths were half full with locals, truck drivers, couples, and a few students laughing too loudly over milkshakes. In the farthest corner sat a young girl, no more than 16. Her hands trembled slightly as she reached for her glass of water. A metal brace clung to her leg, making each movement stiff and awkward. She kept her head low, her brown hair falling over her face like a curtain. She wasn't just eating. She was hiding. The bell above the door jingled. 3 boys, maybe in their late teens, strutted inside. Loud laughter followed them like smoke. Their leather jackets squeaked as they pushed through, and their boots stomped against the linoleum floor with the confidence of wolves entering a sheep's pen. "Look who's here," one of them sneered, spotting her immediately. The girl froze. Her fork slipped from her fingers and clattered against the plate, the sound slicing through the diner's gentle hum. Conversation stopped. All eyes shifted, but no one moved. The tallest boy slid into the booth beside her without asking. He leaned close, his breath sour with soda and cigarettes. "Hey, cripple," he whispered with a grin. "You lose your way again?" The other 2 laughed, cruel and sharp. Her lips quivered, but no words came out. She tried to shift away, but the metal brace slowed her. One boy reached out and tugged the strap of her brace as if it were a toy. "What's this?" "Training wheels for walking." A nervous chuckle came from another table. Not from cruelty, just from fear. People were watching, but their eyes were glued to their plates. Then it happened. The boy beside her slapped her cheek. The sound echoed across the diner like a gunshot. Her head jerked to the side, and her glass of water tipped, spilling across the table. Silence. Even the jukebox in the corner seemed to stop mid-song. Her eyes welled with tears, but she didn't cry. She simply sat there, frozen, as if any movement would shatter her completely. The boys laughed again, proud of their cruelty, and strutted out as loudly as they had come in. The bell jingled, the door slammed, and the sound of their motorcycles faded into the night. For a moment, no one breathed. Then the diner came alive again, quietly, cautiously. Forks clinked. A waitress whispered to another. A trucker shook his head, but didn't get up. The girl sat alone in her booth, cheeks burning, hands trembling, staring down at her cold plate of food. The world had just told her something. You are alone. Or so she thought. Because an hour later, the bell over the diner door rang again. This time, the sound wasn't playful. It was heavy, slow. Boots, bigger, heavier, hit the floor in unison. And when the girl looked up, she saw them. A group of bikers. Who were these bikers? Strangers or something more? And what would happen when they heard what had happened inside the diner an hour before? The bell above the door gave a sharp ding, but this time it didn't sound ordinary. It sounded like a warning. Every head in the diner turned. They came in slowly, one by one, like shadows pulling themselves out of the night. Big men with leather jackets that glistened under the fluorescent lights. Boots that struck the floor with the weight of storms. The patch on their backs bore a skull with burning wings, and the air seemed to thicken as they filled the room. The laughter of a moment ago disappeared. The clatter of forks, the quiet murmur of conversation, everything was swallowed by silence. Even the jukebox, almost as if it had been intimidated too, clicked off mid-song. The leader walked in last. A tall man with a gray beard, tattoos crawling up his arms, and eyes that didn't need to shout to be heard. They were cold and sharp like steel. He scanned the diner once, and though his lips didn't move, everyone understood the silent message. We're not here for fun. The bikers spread out, filling booths, leaning on counters. The waitress's hands trembled as she scribbled down orders for black coffee and bacon. The trucker in the corner lowered his head, as if not seeing would keep him safe. And then the leader's eyes fell on her. The girl in the corner. She had tried to make herself invisible, tucking her hair deeper over her face, curling her hands into fists beneath the table. But it was useless. His gaze found her, held her. He walked toward her booth with slow, heavy steps. Each step echoed like a drumbeat, and her heart raced to keep up. She braced herself, terrified. He stopped at her table. "Mind if I sit?" His voice was low, steady, carrying the weight of a man who had lived through 1,000 battles. She couldn't speak. She only nodded. He slid into the booth across from her, his massive hands resting on the table. For a long moment, he said nothing, just studied her face, the red mark on her cheek, the way her eyes trembled when they tried to meet his. Finally, he asked, "Who did this?" The words dropped like a stone in water. Her throat tightened. She shook her head quickly, eyes darting to the door as if the boys might still be watching. I don't know what you mean." The leader leaned closer, his voice soft but heavy, like thunder rumbling far away. "Kid, that mark on your face didn't put itself there." Tears spilled down her cheeks, and she bit her lip to stop it from trembling. I don't want trouble," she whispered. The biker's jaw clenched. Trouble? He lived in it. But what broke him wasn't the fear in her words, it was the way she said them. As if she believed she deserved this silence, as if the world had taught her not to expect protection. He leaned back, folding his arms. His men were watching quietly from their booths, waiting for his word. "Listen," he said slowly. "Trouble already walked through this door tonight. We're just here to balance the scales." Her eyes widened. She didn't fully understand, but something about his tone, calm, unshakable, made her heart beat slow. At that moment, the bell above the door jingled again. The sound made her flinch. 3 familiar voices laughed as boots stomped against the floor. The same boys. They'd come back. The bikers turned, almost in unison. Their faces didn't show anger, not yet. But their silence was more terrifying than any shout. The leader's lips curved into the smallest, coldest smile. "Balance," he muttered. And the diner, once again, held its breath. The bullies just walked back into the wrong place at the wrong time. What happens when arrogance collides with men who live by their own code? The door slammed shut behind the 3 boys, their laughter echoing like nails on glass. They didn't notice the sudden shift in the air. Or maybe they did, but arrogance kept them blind. "Man, that girl," one of them started, before his words cut off. Because the diner was different now. The atmosphere had changed. Heavy, thick. Dozens of eyes were staring at them. Not timid, not avoiding, staring. At the far end, in the corner booth, the girl sat with the bearded biker. His broad shoulders blocked half the light, and the steel in his eyes locked on the boys the way a predator sizes up prey. Around him, his brothers leaned against walls and booths, silent, unmoving, but dangerous, like loaded guns waiting for a trigger. The tallest bully snorted, trying to shake it off. "What are you looking at, old man?" The biker leader didn't move. He didn't blink. He simply tilted his head toward the girl. Her cheek was still red. The bullies followed his gaze, and for the first time that night, doubt flickered across their faces. The leader finally spoke. His voice was calm, but it cut through the air like a blade. "You think you're men?" The boys laughed nervously. "We're not scared of some old biker gang. This is none of your business." That made one of the bikers by the counter chuckle, a deep, rumbling sound. He stood, towering, his leather vest shifting to reveal scars crawling up his arms. His boots thudded as he walked closer. Another followed, then another. The bully's smirks began to fade. The leader stayed seated, but his presence filled the room. "She's a child," he said softly, almost like a prayer. Then his tone hardened. "And you laid hands on her." The words sank into the silence. One boy tried to laugh again, but his voice cracked. "So what? You gonna call the cops?" The leader's jaw flexed. "We don't call cops." A pause. Heavy. Dangerous. The boy swallowed hard. "Then what do you do?" The biker leaned forward, and his voice dropped low, steady, chilling. "We teach." The entire diner felt it. The shift, the weight of something about to happen. The waitresses froze, plates clutched in trembling hands. The trucker in the corner muttered under his breath, "Lord have mercy." The boys backed up a step, but the bikers didn't advance. Not yet. They just stood there, unflinching, blocking every way out. The sound of boots scraping against the linoleum made the bullies realize they were trapped. The girl, still in her corner, hugged herself. She had never seen men like this before. Men who looked like devils, but carried themselves like guardians. Her heart pounded as the leader finally rose. He stood tall, his shadow stretching across the floor. When he spoke, his words rolled out like thunder. "You came in here, wolves. But tonight," he paused, eyes sharp, voice cold, "you're meeting lions." The bullies froze. And in that split second, before anyone could breathe, the leader took his first step forward. The air is electric. The bullies have nowhere to run. But how far will the bikers go to teach them? And what lesson will they carve into this night? The leader's boots struck the diner floor, slow and heavy. Thud, thud. Each step echoed louder than the boys' pounding hearts. The bullies shifted nervously, but still tried to put on their masks of arrogance. You can't touch us," one stammered, his bravado cracking. We'll press charges." A ripple of laughter moved through the bikers. Not the kind of laughter that mocked. The kind that chilled the blood. The leader stopped just inches away. His steel gray eyes locked on the boy who had slapped the girl. The boy tried to look away, but couldn't. He was pinned by that gaze. "You think strength is slapping someone who can't fight back?" the leader asked, his voice low and sharp. "That doesn't make you strong. That makes you nothing." The diner was so quiet. The hum of the neon sign outside seemed deafening. Then, without warning, one of the bikers at the counter slammed his fist against the table. The sound cracked like thunder, making the bullies jump. Plates rattled, a spoon clattered to the floor, and the waitress gasped. "Answer him," the biker roared. The bully's lips trembled. I. Look at her," the leader commanded, pointing at the girl in the booth. The boys hesitated. "Look at her." His voice boomed, shaking the air. They turned. She sat frozen, her eyes wide, tears shining in them but refusing to fall. For once, she wasn't hiding. She was staring back, her cheek still burning red. The leader lowered his tone, steady but deadly. "You broke something inside her tonight. You thought nobody would stop you. You thought nobody cared." He leaned closer, his beard brushing the boy's ear as he whispered words that cut deeper than fists. "But you forgot one thing. This world still has men who don't stand by." The boy's knees buckled. His friends shuffled backward, bumping into each other, cornered like rats. Then the leader stepped aside. "Teach them," he growled. The bikers moved. Not with wild violence, but with frightening control. Boots slammed against the boys' legs, knocking them down. One bully hit the floor hard, his cry muffled by the stomp of another boot pinning his chest. Another tried to swing a fist, but a tattooed biker caught his wrist midair and twisted until he squealed in pain. The leader didn't throw a punch. He just watched. The lesson wasn't about blood. It was about fear, humility, balance. "Say it," a biker barked, pressing a boy's cheek against the cold tile. I'm sorry," the boy gasped. Louder. "I'm sorry." The other two joined, voices cracking, desperation spilling out. We're sorry. The leader raised a hand, and instantly his men stopped. They didn't need to continue. The boys were already broken, stripped of their arrogance. Their cruelty crumbled into dust. Breathing hard, they crawled backward on shaky hands and knees, scrambling for the door. But before they could flee, the leader spoke one last time. "You walk out of here tonight with a choice. You keep living like cowards, or you remember this moment every time you even think about raising your hand against someone weaker." The boys nodded frantically, too afraid to speak. "Now get out." They stumbled out the door, their footsteps fading into the night like frightened animals escaping a fire. The diner remained silent. Then, slowly, all eyes turned to the girl. She was still trembling, still hugging herself. But something in her face had changed. The fear was there, yes, but there was also a spark, a fragile spark of belief that maybe she wasn't as alone as she thought. The leader met her eyes and gave the smallest nod. Not a smile, not pity, just respect. And for the first time that night, she exhaled. The bullies are gone. The diner is quiet. But the night isn't over yet, because what the bikers are about to do for the girl will change her life forever. The diner was still. The bullies were gone, their shadows swallowed by the night. But the echo of what had just happened lingered in the air, like smoke after fire. The girl sat frozen in her booth, her hands clutching the edge of the table. She didn't know what to say, what to do. Part of her wanted to run, to disappear into the dark. But another part, smaller, trembling, wanted to stay. The leader walked back to her table. His steps were steady, but his eyes softened as he stopped in front of her. "You okay, kid?" His voice was no longer thunder. It was a low rumble, steady, almost gentle. Her throat was tight. She managed a nod, but her eyes betrayed her, wet, shimmering, full of questions she didn't know how to ask. One of the bikers approached with a napkin, awkwardly holding it out. "Here," he muttered, almost shy. His hands were scarred, his arms covered in ink, but his gesture was clumsy, kind. She took it slowly, wiping her cheeks. The trembling in her hands wouldn't stop. The leader slid into the booth across from her again. "What's your name?" "Lila," she whispered. "Lila," he repeated, as if locking it into memory. "Pretty name." For a moment, silence stretched between them. Then he leaned forward, elbows on the table. "Lila, listen to me. What they did to you, it doesn't define you. You hear me? You're not weak. You're not less. You survived." Her lips parted, but no words came. No one had ever said that to her before. Another biker chimed in from the counter, his voice gruff but warm. "My sister, she had polio. Wore braces on both legs. People laughed at her too. But she became the strongest woman I've ever known." Lila blinked, staring at him. For the first time all night, she felt something flicker inside her. Hope. The leader gave a small nod. Strength doesn't always look like fists. Sometimes it looks like getting back up when the world pushes you down. Her eyes welled again, but this time the tears felt different, lighter, freer. The waitress, who had been silent the whole time, finally stepped forward. She placed a fresh plate of food in front of Lila, her hand trembling slightly. "On the house, sweetheart," she whispered. Lila stared at the steaming pancakes, then at the faces around her. For the first time, she didn't feel invisible. The bikers stayed a while, filling the diner with low voices and rough laughter that no longer felt threatening. It felt safe, protective, like a wall between her and the cruel world outside. When they finally rose to leave, the leader placed a $20 bill on the table. Then he looked at her one last time. "You ever see those boys again, you tell them we're still around. They'll remember." Lila swallowed hard, nodding. She wanted to say thank you, but the words felt too small. He must have sensed it because he gave her a small smile, just a flicker, and patted the table once before walking out. The bell jingled. The roar of engines followed. One by one, the bikes thundered into the night, their taillights glowing like red stars until they disappeared. Lila sat there, her hand brushing her cheek where the slap had burned before. But now, when she touched it, she didn't feel shame. She felt something else, a spark. For the first time, she believed she wasn't completely alone in the world. For the first time, she believed she could be strong. The neon sign buzzed outside, glowing brighter than it had all night. And Lila whispered to herself, so quietly no one else could hear, "I'll get back up." If you had been in that diner, would you have stood up for Lila? Or stayed silent like the others? And what does true strength mean to you?